Good morning or afternoon. This is Elliot Clark, the CEO of HRO Today magazine, with another HRO Today educational podcast. So thank you all for tuning in. HRO Today is the leading provider of content and thought leadership for HR executives with more than 180,000 readers around the world, and the producers of the HRO Today forums and manager of the HRO Today Service and Technology Association. I'm joined today by Mia Mends, who is the CEO of Inspirus. Inspirus is part of the global service giant Sodexo. Mia has been the CEO of Sodexo's Benefits and Rewards program since 2014, and in 2016 acquired Inspirus, which is one of the leading providers of employee recognition and incentive programs in the world. And by the way, one of the top-rated HRO Today employee recognition services Baker's Dozen companies, a very highly regarded and rewarded company. Mia is going to talk about something that many people don't think about, which is how you can use rewards and recognition to shape culture when it comes to the topics of diversity and inclusion. So, Mia, welcome to the HRO Today podcast.
Thank you, Elliot. It's great to be with you. And first, let me just let your listening audience know how much we appreciate the work that you and HRO are doing on behalf of the industry. It's really wonderful for us to be part of your work in advancing the industry and the work that we all hold so dear.
Well, thank you very much. I love having you on already. So we appreciate that. I have a few questions about this idea. So we all know that diversity really starts with a talent acquisition and hiring practices to get people in the door. But inclusion is more of a cultural phenomenon. And we also know that incentives and rewards drive behaviors. Everyone agrees with that. So what can a company do to use the rewards program to reinforce and promote inclusion and cross-cultural teamwork?
Elliot, it's a good question, a loaded question. I'm going to try to unpack it. I'm very passionate about this topic, and diversity and inclusion is one that we're carrying forward as a differentiator because we think it's so important and it has the ability to really predict great culture. So first, diversity for me starts with real intentionality and a mindset for individuals and organizations. And true talent acquisition for sure can be a component of a larger D&I plan, ensuring a diverse pipeline. But I think many inaccurately conflate hiring tactics that are often associated with affirmative action with the fundamentals of diversity. And I want to first state that they're very different. I also, if you don't mind, want to challenge a premise in your question, which is that this idea of inclusion is a cultural phenomenon. And I think that that's a misnomer when it comes to inclusion, because a cultural phenomenon is something that is sort of born out of everyone else is doing it, so we have to do it, or some sort of bandwagon effect. And we hope that this concept of inclusion is one that sustains. And I would say for sure that when you think of a cultural phenomenon, the idea of inclusion and the tenets around inclusion, for me, are very different than phenomenon. We want them to be a foundational element of the way companies think about workplace culture. So first, let's acknowledge, in the context of what we're seeing across the political spectrum in public discourse, it makes people like me really want to double down on D&I. I'm a Black woman. I'm raising children of color. And in this polarized climate, I think diversity and inclusion is more relevant than ever. People need to feel valued, safe, and engaged, especially in their workplace. And we can't just hope the workplaces don't become toxic in the same way our public discourse has. We have to be intentional about making sure it doesn't. So to go back to the question around how do companies do this, one, corporations can outline behaviors that are aligned with D&I objectives, train workforce on culture and gender and other elements of D&I. Then they recognize and reward those that model inclusive behaviors, like the managers who cast a wide net to ensure a diverse slate of qualified candidates in the hiring pool. We've had clients that immediately reward employees that are living company values, demonstrating inclusiveness in their daily activity. And so we do that through technology in a way that allows us to scale and democratize this concept. And then I'll just end by saying, for us, there is evidence. Companies that encourage inclusion and foster a diverse culture, that rewards and empowers their employees, develop a culture that inherently promotes diversity, inclusion, and teamwork. And all of this is positive from a productivity and profit perspective, but in so many other intangible ways from a cultural perspective.
great points you made. I want to, because words do matter. I wish everyone agreed words matter. Thank you for pointing out sort of the opportunity for misconception in my question. When I said cultural phenomena, I really wasn't talking about company to company. I was talking about inside the walls of your company. You want to make it part of that culture, to create the environment of inclusion. I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to clarify that, and I would agree with you that we live in polarized times. I think the goal of HR should be, and the goal of corporations should be, to be a beacon and be better than the society that surrounds them, that we should set a better example than what we see in other contexts, and that should be a primary goal of HR. So you mentioned you've been a very successful executive of a division of one of the largest companies in the world, and you yourself are diverse. And Sodexo, I know, has been hailed as a company that has a very strong diversity and inclusion culture. Right. So how do the internal practices or the internal best practices at Sodexo, how have they influenced and informed the way you design or recommend programs to Sodexo Inspirus clients?
So the first thing I'll take just a personal tangent and say that I was so intentional about working for Sodexo. I found them, and one of the things that appealed to me was their values around D&I. I instinctively believed and felt that this was a company where I could thrive because they acknowledge diversity and they celebrate diversity. And I've been there for 6 years and have had a really wonderful career in a place where I believe that every day I can bring my real self to work. I can be 100% authentic, and that is not just accepted, but celebrated. And so personally, it means a lot to me, and it's one of the reasons that professionally I'm excited and passionate about the work to sort of help companies also really orient their culture around D&I. So Sodexo understands that employee experience, one, is a critical component to an organization's success. The most successful companies in the U.S. are people first and culture-driven organizations. Sodexo is no exception. And in hiring decisions and promotions, we try to make space for the broadest range of perspectives. We strive for gender-balanced teams. We've made actually real commitments to getting to gender-balanced teams because our proprietary research shows that this improves performance, productivity, safety, innovation, and culture. And so in-house and also with our clients, we focus on recognizing model behavior and using our platform and software to create a more inclusive environment. Sodexo has identified behaviors that demonstrate inclusion. For example, our peer-to-peer program utilizes years of Sodexo's research to identify the kind of behaviors that promote and support inclusion, and we want to recognize those. Studies also show that behaviors that are recognized get repeated. Behaviors that are measured get repeated. And our experience and research influences this design thinking, and we apply it to every client. So inclusion enhances customer service, and more importantly, the ability to respond to customer needs in a time where so many companies are also looking at emerging markets and where diversity really actually impacts the way that we relate to our clients. So programmatic solutions in D&I increase understanding, promote awareness, celebrate company values, employee experience, and much more. And we consider all of this in our design of client programs.
So let's try to get a bit more granular. It sounds like this is really part of the fabric, the cultural DNA of Sodexo. Now I'll need to unpack your answer. So we know that behaviors that get rewarded get repeated. Okay, so now let's get a little more granular about how can the recognition platform, and specifically clients that you work with, Sodexo Inspirus, how can it be used to drive some of the programs necessary to achieve inclusion, like employee resource groups that are used to help engage diverse populations? And Sodexo operates in many different countries and many different languages. You have many different categories and job families. So you have diverse populations in abundance at Sodexo, and I'm sure your clients do as well. So how do you use the recognition platform to foster the culture of learning and development that helps train managers and the other employees to relate to multicultural perspectives?
So let me say this, and you and I have had this conversation about the role of technology. I think the most important thing is that companies sort of have to embrace the mindset and this initiative from the top. And so it has to be part of leadership philosophy. And once that's there, then our tools really act as an enabler, if you will. And so from a very tactical perspective, the platform, one, connects diverse and geographically distributed teams. So it's available from any device, like most of these solutions today are mobile first. It allows us to connect people and ultimately remove barriers. So it's learning tools. So it's a space for us to do very short, bite-sized pieces of learning modules that reinforce D&I. We really love the ability to enliven virtual communities. So EBRGs is a good example of that, to bring to light and publicize community events. So we're giving people opportunities to genuinely bond and connect through the tool. Now, in our case, non-wired employees make up over 80% of Sodexo's frontline population. And so we find other ways to complement the technology. So lots of real-time, physical, but intimate connections. So celebrating events. But with such a diverse population, really the platform is used to just facilitate great communication and relationships at all levels and across all geographies. So the reach is one of, I think, the great assets, is you get to a lot of people. It's also, from our perspective, it's great to empower employees, right? So what I love about what we've done with our technology, it really has democratized, if you will, the way that employees engage with each other and with employers. So it allows employers leveraging our tool to share knowledge, to allow space for collaboration, to empower employees to develop solutions that come organically from the workplace that positively affect their teams or company. And then we recognize that effort, so we encourage teamwork, and we're encouraging the input of how we improve diversity and inclusion that comes straight from our front line and the employee base. So in short, inclusion and recognizing and rewarding it results in the highest levels of innovation, we believe. And then this is a really simple thing, Elliot, but we believe even the images that we put in the platform, particularly as it relates to peer-to-peer recognition and the e-cards, must reflect diverse families and population, cultures, and people from various holidays to Heritage Month. We want to provide people easy access to the tools that acknowledge and also promote multicultural events that may fall out of people's customary cultural scope. So in the broadest sort of vision, we want to expose team members to a very broad view of the world. We believe there's a lot of power in that.
That's great. And, I would be remiss in not saying that a lot of the description of some of the things that you have been doing can be found on your website at www. Didn't say that well, did I, Mia? Inspirus.com, Inspirus, inspireus.com. I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to give us this perspective on how Sodexo, which is long-hailed as a leader in diversity and inclusion culture, has now used this to help inform and design solutions to help their clients get better at diversity and inclusion within their own walls and really drive cross-cultural perspectives and cross-cultural understanding. And as you said, we live in somewhat trying times, so anything we can do to make people unify is a great social and, as you've said, research shows corporate benefit, helps drive sales, profitability, and improved performance and safety. So I want to thank Mia Mends, CEO of Inspirus, part of Sodexo Group, for taking part in today's HRO Today educational podcast, and look forward to all of you listening to our next in an ongoing series. But this has been a fun conversation. Once again, thanks, Mia. This is Elliot Clark, the CEO of HRO Today.